wanted to thank you, Inonge Khabele, for joining me today to talk as part of the Postcards from Austin series. I would love it if you would tell us who you are, a little bit about who you are.
I'm Inonge Khabele. I don't know. I consider myself a citizen of the world. I was born in Zambia. My mom's Black American and my father is Mosotho from South Africa. And I was born in Zambia, then we lived in Botswana, and then Nigeria, which is where my memories began, in Abraka, Nigeria. And so I remember being 3 years old and counting down until I was going to be 4 years old, because I thought that was the ultimate, was to, like, when I turned 4, I will know everything. I was so excited. So yeah, Nigeria is my first home that I remember. Then after I turned 5, we moved to Lesotho. And I was not thrilled because we're on this tiny Lesotho Airways flying into this like rugged mountainous kingdom in the dead of winter, and everything was like gray and brown and boring. And I miss Nigeria with the festivals and the masquerades and the stilt walkers and, you know, hearing the talking drums. And so I was not thrilled about moving to Lesotho. I was very upset. But then winter broke and springtime, and it was like being in heaven. It was so beautiful. So
the place came alive, and you decided it would be okay if you lived there after that.
Yeah, and everybody was so nice anyway. But
now, whereabouts is that on the map? If I'm picturing South Africa in my head.
So yeah, South Africa is like an upside down triangle, and Lesotho is maybe a little bit northeast inside South Africa. And when you look like on Google Maps, and when it pops out, it kind of pops out because the whole country is mountains.
Would love to know a little bit more about your experience of being from two places. Or more than two, actually, but specifically more than one culture. How did that shape you, and how are you bringing that here?
So how I'm bringing it is I'm developing training, a leadership sort of training that can be used as a diversity and inclusion training as well. It's called Boto, and it's from my culture. And Boto means I am because we are. So it's got to do with oneness and humanity and humaneness. But I grew up in like this little international bubble where I went to British schools, British system schools, you know, school uniform, British curricula. But I didn't speak, my siblings and I didn't speak Sesotho, even though we were growing up in Lesotho. I just remember experiencing a lot of confusion because, like, I'm not an expatriate, but I'm treated like one. And I know a little bit of Sesotho, but not enough to really fully know. So I was always able to get the gist of the conversation, but not really get the meat of it.
You're just outside.
Yeah. So I didn't question it that much until I started living here in Austin when I was 12. And then I was like, I'm nothing at all like the Black Americans here. I'm nothing like, I just have nothing in common because we have a totally different upbringing, and I didn't know the slang. I didn't know those like really subtle things. So for instance, I didn't even learn about like what it really means to be a Black American until I went to Howard University. And then I got to like really study it. So living between the two, it's like I had to go and learn how to be an African American when I went to Howard. There were Africans from all over Africa, and then there were African descendants from the Caribbean, and they were from the UK, and there were people who'd grown up in other parts of the world, and then there were, you know, African Americans. Every region is like different and unique culture. And I had friends from every group, you know. I was more like the artsy group, but there were Afrocentric Africans, and then there were the Jack and Jillers, and the, like really conservative, and it was very healing for me. And I learned a lot of history as well. I mean, my mom had brought me up with a lot of African American history, like books and things like that, and she exposed me to a lot, but it was very different from being in an environment where I could just like really take a deep dive and learn by osmosis. And I think a lot of those like sayings and colloquialisms, I understand them now. Like I'm like, so I can be in a room and somebody will say something and I'll go, yeah.
Now you're in on the joke, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I would be who I am if it were not for Botu, because I experienced a tremendous amount of like discrimination and hatred and like physical violence while I was living here, because I was from Africa and I had this really thick accent and I didn't fit in. And then of course, like with the media propaganda against black people and against African people especially, people took it in and didn't question it. So I was at the receiving end of like a lot of hatred just for that. And I'd go home every year to Lesotho, and it was just like everybody just embraced me, and the culture is very like affectionate, like there's a lot of affection and love, and like people want to know you, like you're the new kid on the block and they're like, tell me everything about you, it's that attitude. Like it's not like, oh, you're different, get away. It's like, oh, you're different, wow, tell me all about yourself. And so every time I went home to Lesotho, it was very, very, very healing for me, and I was able to see like the contrast was like so stark, because I come back here and have like, for the most part, a very cold experience, a lot of rejection.
Your grandmother, Bertha Means, is one of the founding members of St. James Episcopal Church, and it's funny, they posted on the St. James Facebook page an interview with your grandmother and mother, like I think I just saw it yesterday, but about her picketing against segregation and fighting for integration and starting a Black Episcopal church. How has watching her age and care for her, what has that process been like?
Well, I feel absolutely blessed. She's 100 years old now, so we can't expect her to be the way she was. But before then, for many, many years, I worked for her. At one point, she was running 5 different companies. And then she was always doing political stuff and campaigning and raising money, all sorts of projects, and all sorts of like philanthropy and civic stuff. She'd have a dinner, and she would like get food delivered from, say, Rudy's Barbecue, and she put it in nice serving dishes, and she'd get a cake, and people would come, and she'd answer the door, and she'd go, oh, I was up all night just slaving away, cooking for y'all, And everybody would sit at this big table, eat, drink, have fun, and then it was time for business. And, she'd have her laptop and her 3-ring binder and, notes and stuff. And then there's, like the secretary and the treasurer, and everybody had a role, and they'd get to work. As far as she was concerned, there were absolutely no limits to what she or anybody else could do. She overcame so much, segregation and discrimination and all of that. And over the years, I'd ask her, well, how did you deal with the racism? And she always laughed it off. I mean, she would just have this like hearty belly laugh, and she'd go, those people are stupid. Like, they're just stupid. Like, whatever. Like, that was her. And it just seemed like the more resistance she encountered, the more passionate, like she'd like have fun with it. So she has dementia now, and And so there's certain things that she still knows how to do, and she does them really well. And then there are other skills that she's just absolutely lost. And especially since the coronavirus shutdown, I take her to church before almost every week, and she got her, dose of affection. She's always, like, she was the quintessential socialite her whole life. And I used to come, like, just about almost every day. I'd open the front door, and she dressed herself up really nicely. And she's like, well, I'm ready to go when you are. And I'm like, no, we can't go to church, because every day was church day.
Yes.
And then eventually she stopped talking as much. But when she was still in that very talkative phase, if she couldn't think of a word, she'd just make one up, and just keep, and everybody would know what she was talking about. Just make up these, like, funny words and giggle. And so she's just extremely generous and sweet and kind and gracious, and I want to put her in my pocket.
Yes, she radiates such a positivity, and she's always the first one in church to stand up and dance. I know.
Oh yeah, that. Her dancing, yeah.
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 So, well, we had spoken a bit about maybe bringing up your brother and the work he did in Austin. Could you talk a little bit about him, starting with his full name?
So my brother, Litsie James Inonge Khabele. Kotso means peace. And he, to me, he was the living embodiment, 100%, and extra credit. For years, he tried to get me to understand the realm that he lived in, and we would have these, late night phone conversations and up until 3 o'clock in the morning. And he challenged me on my beliefs and my assumptions and my, prejudices, because I was very, I've made up my mind, I know what's going on, and he would just kind of gently question me, and there were things that I didn't want to let go, and but then when he passed away, it's almost like everything that he was trying to get me to see and understand, it was in me, and I was like, oh, and I really, it's very painful to me that it took him passing away for me to get it, because I've got it now, and I just wish that he was here and we could have a conversation like this.
His passing was pretty sudden, yes?
Yeah, it was totally unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that philosophy, or what is that practice?
So the philosophy is that we all are one. We're not separated. I'm you and you are me. Really at the core of it, there is no separation. And that for a family or a society to function well and to be healthy, there needs to be a foundation of respect, because if respect is not there, then there isn't even a possibility of love. So it's just this attitude of reverence towards other human beings, towards life, the environment, birds, animals, air, water, fish. And so the Buddha philosophy is that there is one life, one spirit, just one. And each one of us is a different aspect of the one. So, for instance, when I first met you, I didn't see you as separate from me, right? We're one, but you're just another part of me that I had yet to discover. So naturally, I want to learn everything that I can about you, because as I learn about you, my consciousness expands, right? So it encourages, of course, it encourages curiosity. So the traditional, people who live in rural areas and villages are more, people are people. We have our problems, we have our egos, stuff like that. But if you can imagine where basically everybody in the culture has this understanding, it's not that everybody is going to live up to the standard, but everybody knows the standard.
I love the opportunity to talk to you because there's such a need for reverence between humans right now, especially in our shared culture of America. Not only do I find that fascinating, but just so relevant. And I truly support your efforts to live that and be that and teach that and
Thank you.
And put that out there, and the opportunity to connect about it is it does feel healing to me.